Hello, everyone. This is Lead With Who You Are. I'm Dia Bondi, and on this show, we explore and discover what it truly means to lead with who you are, and we're doing it with people who embody just that, and with folks who will help you do that. And today, we have Jonah Paquette. In this convo, we're going to show how awe, yes, awe, will help you get things done, be more resourceful, and change your state so you can lead with who you are. Jonah shares the physiological and psychological benefits of awe and gives us a few ways we can find awe in the everyday, little portals we can step through whenever we need to. Now, unlike other activities like exercise and meditation, Jonah says awe is not guaranteed. So listen up and learn how to increase your chances of being awestruck. Let's go. You can ask for more and get it if you ask like an auctioneer. The book, Ask Like an Auctioneer, How to Ask for More and Get It, is coming soon. So go to asklikeanauctioneer.com and get on the list for pre-orders now. In the book, you'll learn the power of asking big, the one idea that holds us back from asking for more and getting it, and the 9 ideas I learned from the auctioneering stage that you can use as strategies to help you step into every ask with courage and conviction. Get on the pre-order list now for pre-order bonuses. Again, go to asklikeanauctioneer.com now. Hey, just a quick reminder. You can subscribe to this show on your podcast platform of choice. We're live nearly everywhere, and you can always listen to the show at diabondi.com. If there's a leader or innovator in your life who is at their shiniest when they lead with who they truly are, please share the show with them and rate, subscribe, and leave us a review. It makes a huge difference in the reach that the show has when you let everyone else know what you love about the show. Thanks so much. Jonah is a clinical psychologist, author, and speaker. He's the author of 4 books, Happily Even After, Awestruck, Real Happiness, and the Happiness Toolbox, all of which focus on helping people achieve happier, more meaningful lives. In addition to his clinical work and writing, Jonah provides training and consultation to organizations on the promotion of well-being and conducts keynotes and workshops around the country and internationally. Hello, Jonah. Okay, so here we go. So we are so focused. Where do we actually find inspiration and relief from that incredible focus, especially for folks listening to this podcast who are mostly ambitious professionals that have really serious goals and take what they're doing very seriously and have a really strong sense of personal responsibility. And so that focus can oftentimes take over our lives. So I'm having you on today to discuss the role of awe in our leadership and in our life and work, and how we tap into the power of being amazed, as you say. So in our work lives, we can often feel like everything is on the table. So we're pitching and defending our ideas. We're buttoning up everything around us so projects really land really well. We're managing the heck out of everything, and we're really getting shit done. And that sometimes feels great, but can start to feel really flat. So why do we need to tap into the power of being amazed? And now that I'm nearly 50, there is a part of me that misses sort of the awe that I once felt earlier in my career, earlier in my marriage, early in my parenting. And I'm really often sort of lost to the daily grind. Everyone listening now sort of gets my most, the part of me that almost forcefully finds things to feel inspired and awestruck about. But it's not easy on a daily basis to let that enter my life, because I am one of those folks who are just so focused and getting it done. So how do we lead and live in a way that taps into something that lifts us up and why is it a worthy pursuit? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So Jonah Paquette, I'm so happy to have you here with us today as someone who does a lot of work around how we all can be more awestruck.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm pumped to be here with you as well.
There's nothing like somebody saying, who's like an awe expert, talking about being pumped. And
I am pumped.
I think about awe as like this sort of like open and very like relaxed state, but I'm happy that you're pumped to be here. So in this setup, we let folks know sort of the world of work, the world that your work sits in around happiness, and this is my word, not yours, but just like wholeness and wellness and mental health. So you have written mucho books. So we shared the titles already, but can you share a little bit of the titles and maybe what the theme that runs through all of them really is, and especially the first book we mentioned in your bio?
Yeah, I think the through line for all of my books, I've written 4, which I guess does count as mucho.
It's mucho.
Thank you.
I just wrote 1, and that felt like mucho, but 4 would be extra mucho.
What is mucho for sure? So I'm a clinical psychologist by trade, as your listeners know. But unlike a lot of my field, which historically, traditionally has focused on mental illness, psychopathology, all super important, I've always been fascinated with the other side of the coin, which is how do we live our best life? How do we find fulfillment, meaning, purpose? I love your word wholeness, actually. I think that sums it up really nicely, because it's not just about a frivolous kind of feeling good all the time and feeling happy. It's really about finding connection, fulfillment, wholeness, and a sense of belonging in life. And so I've always been fascinated with that. So I think the through line largely focuses on what would be called like applied positive psychology or the science of well-being, but kind of trying to answer some of the questions that have been pondered by philosophers and theologians for thousands of years, which is like, in this short time that we have, this blink of an eye that we get on this planet, like how do you find meaning, and how do you get the most out of that? So even though my books have focused on different aspects of that, the themes around gratitude, connection, compassion, awe. So my book, Awestruck, as you mentioned, focuses mostly on that, and the other ones include books like Happily, Even After, The Happiness Toolbox, and Real Happiness, all focused on well-being and the good life.
Happiness even after what?
Happily Even After, which would be
Happily Even After, yeah.
How do we find resilience following hardship? Because if there's one money-back guarantee in life, it's that life's going to knock us down, whether it's illness, breakup, health scares, divorce, loss, pandemics. And so I became really curious about how do these kinds of skills for well-being that I've always been quite interested in, how do those help us get out of those holes? How do they help us kind of get back up after we've been knocked down? So that was the theme of that book.
I mean, as a therapist, you might have a point of view on this, but I spend a lot of time trying to see what's working, especially in my communications work. I come from a premise that like you are your most powerful when you speak from who you really are. So our work is around, tell me and help. Let's do some work sort of framing up and naming and claiming a way in which we can say, yeah, that's who I am, even if it feels aspirational. And then speaking from that place, my work is very, well, it's real. It is aspirational because we're always reaching toward how do I have the most impact? How do I, speak in a way that is to the world and my leadership in a way that is most aligned to who I am, but also serve the need of the moment. And it's very much focused on what is working, not on what's not working. And so I get to spend a lot of time in sort of an aspirational place, right? Maybe even on the edge of being awestruck by my clients. But when I look around, when I really at quiet moments, I'm going to get choked up about it. At quiet moments, I'm maybe folks who are listening are part of a sandwich generation where I'm raising kids and also growing my business at the same time, caring for aging parents. And it is a lot. And when I look around, really, there is so much difficulty. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of problem that we deal with every single day. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was a kid, my dad, he had a small construction company. He'd come home from work and I'd be like, what'd you do today? Or how was your day? And he'd be like, managing difficulties, managing problems,
Yes.
And there's this very interesting desire for things to be problem-free, even with the founders that I work with. They're in the middle of deep struggle. You're trying to build something, trying to scale something up, trying to grow teams, and it's just one deluge of difficulty after another. I think that's what I mean when I say, like, we are so focused on trying to make something, trying to build something, trying to get somewhere that we can just bear down. And so in the face of all this difficulty, this strife that, as you say, is inevitably life, especially for ambitious, not especially, I think for everyone, but for ambitious professionals who just want, they're always reaching toward, it's like they walk toward their goals, and like the horizon, it just walks away from them, because there's always something else to do. Why do we need to pursue awe? What does that help us with?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the fascinating things that I learned I've always been interested in questions, like I said, around well-being and the good life. But the really interesting thing for awe for me was I went from, in the course of writing that book, Awestruck, I went from thinking, oh, this is like a nice cherry on top of a good life sundae. It's nice if you have it, but it's not essential, to this is actually an integral part of a whole life. Like, we actually need more of this in our life. And part of that was because in learning about this, and there's been this whole science emerging around, the benefits of awe and wonder in our lives, it turns out that these wow moments of life change us. They change our, relationships. They change our mood. They shift what's happening in our brain to help us be more focused and more creative. So there's actually these incredible benefits to our health that comes from it in terms of inflammation in our body. So that was, to me, like the most awe-inspiring and eye-opening part of that process, was really learning about how, whether you're in business, whether you're a leader, but anybody who's listening, really, that if we can find ways to have just a little bit more of this emotion in our life, a little bit more of those wow moments in our lives, it changes our mental health, our mood, our relationships, our health, orients us to our values more effectively. So all kinds of incredible benefits that can change us in lasting and meaningful ways.
Okay, so the physiology of awe is good for us,
Yeah.
We know this about exercise, and we make ourselves go to the gym.
Yep.
Even when we don't want to. But we're not like, at 9:00 every day, I got to go get some awe. Like, we don't do that. And you've said a few things. You said awe, and then you've said wow. And it's easy for us to think that awe is expensive, wow is expensive, because we've been marketed to that, awe and wow are only for that cruise that you went on, or only for that moment that you stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon and look into the abyss of life's beauty. Yep. I mean, there is, and that can feel like I don't have time for it. Where do we find, like, what is awe? What is it? And then also, where can we find it in a way that doesn't feel like a chore, or that we have to write a big check to get it?
So important to think about. And that was actually one of my main motives in writing my book, was really just to send that message that, yes, we think of it as those once in a lifetime flashbulb moments, which, by the way, when those happen to you, great, that's awesome, literally. But that shouldn't be where the story ends. Like, really, the magic is finding it in the everyday stuff, which I hope that we can think about in just a bit too. But first you asked, like, well, how do we even define it, which I think is a good place to start too, because I think we know it when we see it, we know it when we feel it. But I would really say that awe, drawing from those that research this for a living, what a gig, by the way, is like studying awe for a living, would be like these two separate but connected ingredients. First, we encounter something that's bigger than us, so there's a sense of scale to it, right? Which can either be in the literal realm, like looking up at a giant grove of redwoods or the night sky or a sunset, or the idea realm, like you learn about something or you encounter something that, kind of like watching a child take their first steps, is bigger than you, even if it's not in like the way that the Grand Canyon would be. The second ingredient that they talk about is called transcendence, which is that there's something about it that goes beyond what we thought we knew. It goes beyond the assumptions that we had. It sort of challenges us to rethink what we've experienced. So there's an element of newness, freshness, surprise, perspective. If you see the same exact grove of redwoods or the same exact view every day, it may not inspire that same feeling of awe for the 1000th time, in other words.
Okay, so the second part of awe sounds like homework. Okay, like, you talked about it in terms of, and we're getting there, folks, but like you talked about it in terms of, I had the word and then it fell out. This is the thing that happens to me now, where, like, that feeling where you go to the refrigerator and you're like, wait,
Why did I
what
come
was
here?
I looking for? Yeah, it's like it was right there and then it fell out.
It happens to me all the time.
But you talked about it in terms of like a state where you're looking for a state. Awe is a state that has an impact on your physiology and other things. But then you just said one component is it challenges you to think differently. And for a lot of folks listening today, the last thing they want to do is a lot more thinking.
And thinking might be putting it too finely. In other words, like there's something about it though that's new. Like so, it's not. It's something that goes beyond what we thought we knew. In other words, they call that transcendence or accommodation. But the idea is that you encounter something that's vast, that's bigger than us, but that also has an element of freshness, an element of perspective that we didn't necessarily have, before. So
and that can hit us. That can hit us like a
us.
feeling. It doesn't have to think. It doesn't.
Absolutely.
It doesn't force us to be like, oh, now I have to think through this huge existential problem that
100%.
Right. So it's not work. It's the opposite of work.
You can look out at the vineyards. You can look up at a sunset, right, and be like, "Wow, there's something just so incredible about this moment," right? And that moment of wow, and it doesn't have to be this analysis that goes with it.
Right. Okay, I just wanted to name that because a lot of people listening to the show spend a lot of time doing a lot of analysis, and we're not building an Excel spreadsheet for our dosages of awe. That's not what's happening.
Definitely not.
Okay, so we've got these two aspects of awe, and it sounds like, we're really wanting to take these out of the assumption that it's something that we have to pursue that's big, expensive, physically large, that is only available for folks who can write the check that let them, sit in the Sistine Chapel or let them, stand, at the base of the Cristo in Brazil or whatever. So if I say, wow, yeah, awe is something I might want to pursue a little bit more, get some doses of that in my life because it changes my physiology. What is the other thing you said? It lets you access your values.
Yeah, there's all kinds of benefits that I'll just kind of breeze through a couple real quick because it might be of interest. So we know that when we experience this emotion, even in small doses is the really cool thing. It boosts our mood, but in lasting ways. So we might, even a couple of weeks later, we can often feel better. So a decrease in stress and an increase in our overall mood. We feel closer to other people. These have all been shown in experiments, which is really cool. We actually feel more connected to the world around us. We become kinder, more pro-social people. So we become more compassionate, more altruistic after we experience this emotion. It lowers our inflammatory response in our body. So we actually have less chronic inflammation happening in our body, which has all kinds of health benefits. It decreases what's called the default mode network of our brain, which is like that overthinking kind of, as you mentioned, there's a lot of overthinkers in your listening audience. That overthinking, overanalyzing part of our brain, that self-judgment, that rumination, that goes offline after we experience this emotion. So all kinds of really cool benefits.
Let me jump in right there. There's a term that I use in my work. I talk about it in my book with the guys in the back room, the elves in your back room that can work on problems.
Yep.
That in sort of an unconscious state. It's very interesting that you talk about decreasing overthinking, which can, which when I think about overthinking, I think about sort of a myopic focus on one problem, the perseverating on one thing, the sort of circle thinking about it. We can get less resourceful. We see fewer connections between ideas that can maybe unlock something because we're not in a bigger passive state where we can sort of free associate. We're in a very gripped kind of state, right?
Yes.
So it sounds like awe can be, when we pursue awe, even for a minute, that it can be a gateway for us to access deeper non-thinking resources.
Yeah, emotional resources or sort of a focus on the things that matter and sort of cutting out the noise, which is such a, when that default mode network is active and it's all that sort of that little sort of inner critic almost that comes up and that monitoring of ourselves that we often do. So, it's been shown to increase creativity related to that. It's been shown to increase novel perspective taking and sort of new ideas. So there's lots of cool benefits that come to our mind, to our body, as we said, to our relationships. So a really cool emotion that, again, that was the thing that blew my mind was I've always looked at these moments as kind of cool, powerful, meaningful moments to me, but I never realized how important they were. And that's been the whole sort of shift that's happened in my own perspective around awe is just the fact that these little moments that, brief as they might be, can actually change us in really powerful, lasting ways.
So can we be really pragmatic about it? And,
Yeah.
For some of us, again, we might go to the gym for we might show up at CrossFit for 45 minutes, or we might take our daily dog walk or whatever, because we know it's good for our bodies, or we eat the certain thing that we don't love because we know that it's got antioxidants in it, whatever the heck those are. And, we do all this stuff, and we meditate, right? I don't. I'm terrible at it. But folks meditate, and they pursue that. No, even if they don't want to, they do it, and they know that it's going to bring them something. So, is there a thing where I'm like, I'm going to go get some awe today? Like, do you actually program it into your life to try to access these things that we're talking about here?
It's such a good question because, and I devote quite a bit of the second half of my book for listeners that are interested on having about 60 or 70 different kind of small prompts and ideas for pursuing it. But what I always preface it with is like, it's a little different from some of these other things because there's no guarantees with awe. Like, I could go to the Grand Canyon tomorrow, and if my mind is all focused on either my beloved Knicks losing their game recently, or emails that I forgot to respond to, or a crappy interaction I had with somebody, I'm not going to experience awe even from the Grand Canyon, right? Because I'm just not going to be in that right mindset. So what I tend to think more in terms of is like getting more bites at the apple. We know that if I'm just sitting all day in front of my screen, kind of checked out, not engaging in the world, not getting outside with nature, not connecting on a human-to-human level, not learning about things that expand my mind, I could be pretty sure that I'm not going to experience a whole lot of awe in my life. So what we want to do is try to just open that up. But to what we said earlier, like, we don't want to just think of the big stuff, those once-in-a-lifetime moments. Like, listeners can even do this literally right now, which is wherever you are joining from, wherever you're listening in from. Just look around, like, your field of vision, literally in this moment. We're recording this on, June 20th, 12:26. Like, wherever you are, whatever time, like, look around and just see how many things would have been absolutely just mind-blowing to someone even 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Like, we are actually constantly surrounded by these incredible gifts, these incredible magical parts of our life that we so often miss. So every day, like, pause and just look around and say, like, how many things can I actually find some wow in? How many things can I find some wonder in? Maybe it's like a changing color of a leaf, or maybe it's like looking up at a cloud formation, or maybe it's just having a moment of connection with someone you care about and be like, holy crap, I get to have a moment of connection with another human. That's awesome. Reading something that just blows your mind, or learning about a topic that expands your mind, or courageous people that, are changing the world and getting inspired by them. Like, there's so many opportunities for it. And I think in some ways the real shame is that we have these blinders on, most of us at least, where we just lose sight of that magic. And I think the real message with awe is just kind of rediscovering it, rekindling that a little bit, and finding it in ways big and small.
Yeah, it really comes to mind. A few years ago, I went on a retreat, and there was a woman who is I don't know how to call it. Like, she's a nature educator, basically. She's a naturalist, but she is super involved in, like, very large, like, land trusts. And, she moves the needle on preserving the natural world for us. And on that retreat, she was a participant, but ended up, for some reason, taking us on, like, literally a 5-minute sensory exploration where we just stood out. We, like, went outside, closed our eyes, and she took us through our senses and just had us do a noticing activity. And it was crazy to me to notice how much, in the exercise, that things around me were coming into my awareness that were always there, that I had totally, like, just the sound of the trees. I was like, didn't realize what they sounded like until I stopped for a minute. And then I felt really overcome by, like, actually where I was in this ecological zone that I was in, under this huge canopy of trees and it wasn't the environment, wasn't even looking at it, but the taking a beat and looking around and letting something in that you otherwise just wouldn't recognize is creating an opportunity for awe, not necessarily causing awe.
100%. Being open to it. And that, your example, by the way, like, you might as well have been reading my mind, because I can remember something extremely similar happened to me. And it was like this, wow, this is all happening here, but I know I normally miss it. and if I wasn't just pausing, slowing down, being present, and then reflecting on just my place in this space and just getting in touch with that on both a sensory and an emotional and a cognitive level, like all those different parts of the puzzle. And it's just incredible. And I think that like we could be anywhere in life, but miss out on those opportunities for all that are all around us. So yes, go out and seek out the big stuff if you can, if you have the means. But to me, the magic is actually in the small stuff. It's in the everyday that we just so often miss.
Okay, so I'm noticing right now, and then we're going to talk about leadership, but I'm noticing right now, like, okay, how do I do this every day? For sure, I do the thing where I move my body hard every day because I like low skill, high effort exercises in my body, like movements in my body that with, jogging straight up a hill, lifting heavy weights and putting them back down because they activate the guys in the back room a fair bit, like, because my attention has to be on, like, I got to lift this bar right now. So, so my guys in my back room will come out to play, when that's happening because they have space. The rest of my thinking self is shut down because I got to deal with, like, picking up this bar. But there are other times, like, as soon as that's over in my day, I'm like, all right, let's get to it. And my whole day can be really focused on what I'm doing and how not good enough it is. And how I've not reached the goal that I want yet, and just all the grind, right? And I'm noticing, like, okay, when I do, where are moments in my day where there's opportunity to do that, and how might I do it, and I don't even notice it? And one, I'm sitting here, we're having this recording, I'm sitting at my desk, and I have an office outside of my home in a second story office in a building on the corner of two sort of busy 4-lane roads. But it's all there's sidewalks on either side, and my office looks out at an intersection, basically. So I can see 50 yards on either side of the intersection, people walking to the intersection, standing and waiting to walk across. And one of the things I actually realize I really love to do and makes me feel smaller and less pinned up against what's hard, more resourceful, is that if I take a minute and actually notice who's on the street. Like, I see families with kids. I see, an aged person walking with a shopping bag. And those people have no idea that I'm sitting here. Meaning their lives are happening whether my life is happening or not. It's a weird thing to say, but it's like, it gives me, that feeling when you travel somewhere and it makes you feel small?
Yes.
And there's relief in that. Mm-hmm. It's like that. And that gives me that state of awe a little bit, that, like,
absolutely,
they don't know about me, they don't care about me, and they are busy with the problems in their own lives. And it just brings things into perspective in a second. And I don't have to go anywhere.
I love it. Yeah, and I think that checks so many boxes, right? Because it's accessible to you. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to travel halfway around the world, but it gives you that feeling of smallness, yet connected to something, to this kind of greater experience of being a living being, of being a human, of living on this planet. And just, it's like you're a speck, and yet how cool that I get to be a speck in all of this, as opposed to like the existential dread of like, oh, I'm meaningless and all that.
Yeah, I'm just a speck. It's not I'm just a speck. It's like, oh, thank God I'm a speck.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does this help us in our leadership? I hope the stuff that you were talking about earlier is resonant for all my founders, folks who are, nose to the grindstone and choose to be. They've said yes to doing some really hard, heavy lifts in their professional lives, and it requires a lot of effort. Like, there's no effort. I just don't buy the, like, if you just, then it would all feel better, that ease is difficult when we're doing difficult things. The notion that this is available to you just to get yourself unstuck, to activate the guys in the back room, to put you in those states that make you more resourceful. But how does that impact? So you can have you can be hit with a new idea.
Yeah.
You can solve a problem. You can let go so that you can let someone else, whatever the things are that awe might help unlock for you when you're feeling stuck. So, but how might this help us in our leadership? I know you do workshops and talks around this tied to leadership. So why the heck for leadership?
Yeah, because it can sound a little not counterintuitive, but a little random at first to be like, well, I'm going to get here and talk about awe and wonder and how that can improve your leadership skills. And people might give you a little strange look at first. But, when I think about so many of the core skills that good leaders possess, or, need to make more room for growth in their lives. Like, it's actually interesting to me how many of them map onto particular benefits that have been shown with awe. So like when I think about, obviously in terms of the ability to think in novel and creative ways, well, awe has been shown to increase our capacity to engage in novel problem solving skills and to see solutions to things outside of how we previously did. When I think of the importance of being able to juggle a lot of stress and to still perform in those situations, and awe, one of the most reliable findings is that it lowers our overall level of perceived stress and allows us to focus on what's right in front of us. When I think about, the importance of having connection, collaboration, and like compassionate leadership is obviously a big thing that's kind of out there, and we're learning so much more about how important that is. Well, experiencing this emotion is one of the most reliable ways to shift from that sort of self-focused more to that, way of service and being there for others. So connection, compassion, curiosity, all these things get promoted through the experience of awe. And of course, as I mentioned, like the default mode network and the importance of just focus, concentration, focusing on that one thing that's in front of you instead of the 1,000 tasks that might be behind you in the background. That too is such an important, obviously, skill for leaders. So when I think about prosociality, compassionate leadership, fostering connection and genuinely like caring about people on your team as humans, when I think about creativity, problem solving skills, obviously like alignment with values, as we talked about, these are all, I think, essential for all of us, but I think in some ways have unique and particular benefits for those that are in leadership type roles in whatever setting you find yourself in, for sure.
So I'd planned to be like, okay, Jonah, coach me on how I can get more awe in my life. But just recognize it when I sit in this chair and can see, I can watch people sort of living their lives around me, unconcerned, to get access to that. I'm just a speck relief. Like that, I think I got it. I think I'm good.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You don't have to send me an invoice.
I think you got it.
Because I think I got it. I'm like, oh yeah, it's right here. I didn't have to go to the Grand Canyon. Although, if I have another chance to go to the Grand Canyon, I will take you up on it.
Me as well.
Yeah, it's the best. And it is true for me that the natural world is a place that is. I like this idea that like awe is not guaranteed, so we have to kind of do things where the opportunity to have awe can be created, like things that let us create opportunities for awe and to be awestruck. I know I can go to the gym and I'm no matter how grumpy I am, I'm pretty guaranteed that 45 minutes picking up heavy things and putting them back down, I'm gonna, like it's almost a guarantee on the other side I'm going to feel differently. And awe is not guaranteed, so we just have to create these opportunities for it to step in and show up for us. And so tell us about the resource guide you have in the resource guide, or the exercises you have in the book, Awestruck, that'll help us create those opportunities. Can you say a little bit more about those and where we can find them?
So in my book, Awestruck, it's basically a 2-part book, more than 2 chapters. But, first part goes into all the benefits, like what is awe? How does it impact our mind, our body, our relationships, etc. So it's kind of the backdrop of that. And then the second one is basically 10 chapters, each one devoted to a different pathway to experiencing awe, one of which is like the natural world, which is a big one for me, obviously. But it also includes things like how do we find it in the present moment, like in the small stuff? How do we find it through other people, through moments of love, connection, inspiration? How do we find it through, the arts and creativity and parts of life that we can experience it that way? So kind of these different pathways, again, recognizing that no single person is going to experience it the same way as the next person. What gives you a sense of awe might give me a shrug or vice versa, and that's okay. It's like, I think sometimes people get caught up with like the shoulds of awe, right? Of like, oh, I should be feeling something more than I am. And it's like, just, no, be open to the experience, but whatever comes up for you comes up. So I have, those 10 chapters, each with about 6 or 7 different practices, prompts, meditations, visualization exercises, and so forth, just designed to plant those seeds. And really, at the end of the day, the meta message is just, these moments are all around us, and we just want to open ourselves up in small ways to finding them a little bit more.
Okay, in pure Dia fashion, because I have such a strong bias toward action. For those of you listening, go grab Jonah's book. Get these 10 prompts in the second half of his book. And your homework this year is to go through the guide, these little portals to awe opportunities, and find 2 that you can name and claim and say, these 2 are ones that are really resonant for me, and add them to your toolbox. So doesn't feel like a mystery. It feels like a tool you can access at any point that you need. You've discovered what creates an opportunity for you, and it can be in your fingertips. You don't have to wonder anymore, even though they might cause wonder. You got that?
Well played.
Yeah. Okay, Jonah, so what can people do with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, you can certainly track me down on my website. That's jonahpaquette.com, and you can obviously learn more about my work there. My books are all listed there as well. If you go there and actually sign up for my free newsletter, it comes out every week, and if you sign up for that free newsletter, you can also get a free happiness e-guide with 10 different skills for well-being attached to that. So that's just all through my website, and of course you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, kind of all the social networks, and those are all listed on my website too.
Excellent. Okay, so for bonus round, I'm going to ask you this question, even though we didn't talk about it very much, which is, what does it mean for you to lead with who you are?
Yeah, good question. I think for me, it is, I would say probably the most transformative, in addition to awe, kind of the most transformative kind of skill for well-being, because that's my area that I'm fascinated around, is gratitude. And so for me, it's a lot about leading with gratitude. When I've been fortunate enough to be in leadership positions, always sort of trying to foster a culture of appreciation, and both in terms of how I connect with others, how I, what I try to model and embody myself, and also just to feel like to really feel, even on a personal level, that whatever opportunities have come my way are certainly not things I'm entitled to. And so to really have a sense of a deep appreciation and recognition for that. So I think leading from that place of authentic gratitude for me is probably there's obviously more, but that's probably the main thing I like to keep in mind when it comes to how I am in those settings.
A+ for you. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much for being with me between seeing your clients today. I know today is an actual client-facing day for you, and it was a joy sharing the TEDx stage with you. I wish we could have had more time to high-five each other, and we're just doing it now.
We're doing it now. Better late than never. And likewise, I was just so blown away by being able to be in the audience and cheer on your talk that day. So it's awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Lead with Who You Are is a production of Dia Bondi Communications and is scored, mixed, and produced by Arthur Leon Adams III. Have a question or an inquiry? Reach out to us at hello@diabondi.com. You can like, share, rate, and subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite shows. Go to diabondi.com for the show notes to find our tools, frameworks, content, and programs to help you and your team speak powerfully and lead with who you are.